Hey everybody, this is Stephanie Francisco, Communications Director at Conservation Alabama. We're back with another conservation Q&A video chat. We had a little bit of a hiatus there while I rearranged my office. So now I got a whole new background. It's very exciting. And today we're joined by Daniel Tait. Daniel is the COO of Energy Alabama, and he's based in Huntsville. Welcome, Daniel. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, Stephanie.
So tell us about Energy Alabama.
Well, Energy Alabama is a nonprofit organization. As you said, I'm based in Huntsville, but we operate all over the state, and we focus on trying to accelerate Alabama's transition to sustainable energy. So for us, it's basically three main pillars that we really focus on of work to try to help us get there. Number one is education, teaching people about sustainable energy. And a lot of times that's work in schools, K through 12 students, helping them as well. We also have a whole pillar of work around advocacy and policy, putting in place good policy for the state of Alabama to help accelerate this transition, grow jobs, things like that. In some cases, actually making sure we can take bad policy off the books that may have been in existence for quite some time. And then the third thing that we do, internally, we call it technical assistance. And that really is just helping people build stuff, whether it be like renewable energy or energy efficiency projects. If you go out like I do and you preach the gospel for long enough and you say, this is what you should do. And someone's going to say, you know what, I agree with you, Daniel, we should do that. And how do I do it? And you can't just say, well, good luck. I hope that you find somebody to help you with that. So, to the extent that this is still a very nascent and growing market in Alabama, we step in sometimes and help nonprofits or companies, governments, things like that, do these types of projects as well. So that's us.
That's you. Well, so over the last few months, everybody's work has changed. I mean, the logistical aspects of our work has changed, or we can't really go and do like we're used to. But have you had to adjust your programmatic work in light of the pandemic and everything else going on in the state?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's like a day-to-day operation for us where almost all of us were working remotely anyway. So like for day-to-day, it was, pretty simple for us to kind of pick it up. From a programmatic standpoint, though, to, directly to your question, some things continued on just as normal in the sense that, there are dockets of the Public Service Commission that we're active in, and these issues don't go away. Some may be delayed, a couple of weeks, things like that, but nothing major, so we're still active in that. Now, the one big change is the pandemic itself, right? So we, hear a lot that people think about sustainability. They always think about it in an environmental term. And while that's true, I mean, it has an environmental bent to it and is a big part of sustainability. It also has to be sustainable for people, so we come at it from that standpoint that, if we're going to be out here advocating for sustainable energy, if people don't literally have access to energy because their power's been cut off or they're being charged so many late fees that they can't pay the bill because they're out of work and all the things that a lot of people are dealing with right now, that's not sustainable energy. People need access to energy in order for it to be sustainable. So, we had to step it into high gear right after the governor issued emergency declaration. Unfortunately, there were, quite a few utilities here in the state that did not act immediately to suspend disconnections and late fees. And so, we and a few other groups, took pretty decisive and quick action to try to help make that happen. And, I'm happy to say that, even though it may have taken a lot longer than I wanted it to, and in terms of, I wish we wouldn't have had to do that at all. But at least we were able to get the vast majority of utilities to agree to stop disconnections and late fees. I know we're at a point now where some utilities are starting disconnections again, and we can talk about that. But yeah, that was a big change for us in order, again, like I say, making it sustainable for people. Is if we're asking people to stay home, they need access.
For sure. And I know when I was following that work that y'all were doing, over the last couple of months, I think in my head, you got the big utilities like Alabama Power and TVA, but then there are all those other sort of local utilities that you were having to get in contact with too, right? I mean, it wasn't just like you could get Alabama Power to sign on and then you were good.
Right. Yeah. And that's a really key point for a lot of people to remember is that, a lot of people think of Alabama Power as the big utility in the state, and that is true. But,
Mhm.
there are 50, 60 something odd electric utilities, and that's just
Wow.
electric, right? So you have then gas utilities, we have water utilities, oftentimes you saw other states working a lot on telecom and broadband because, again, we're asking people to stay home and teach
Right.
their children from home. And then there's a whole broadband access issue that, the legislature's been battling about how to solve for quite some time. So
Right.
yeah, it's not just electric and it's not just Alabama Power. There are tons of utilities out there. And so we, had to call one by one, trying to figure out what the
Hmm.
policies were, how long the disconnection would be, and would they waive late fees and all that good stuff. So it was a lot of work.
For sure. Well, you mentioned the Public Service Commission earlier. If folks watching aren't really familiar with the Public Service Commission, could you kind of give them like the 101 version of what those folks do?
So public service commissions exist in every state, and sometimes they're referred to as a PUC instead of a PSC, and this stands for a Public Utilities Commission. But by and large, they do the same thing. They're usually 3 to 5 members, and in our case here in Alabama, we have 3 members, and they are charged with regulating utilities, private utilities typically. Now, some states have authority over municipal utilities or electric cooperatives, things like that. But here in Alabama, it's just private utilities. And so you say, well, why do we do that? Well, it's been like that and is like that in many states, right? Because if you think about, if you live in Birmingham or Montgomery or Tuscaloosa and you want to get electricity to your house, well, you have one option, and that option is Alabama Power. And
Hmm.
has been a good historical reason for that. We didn't want to build 10 grids throughout every city in America. So we said, okay, we're going to grant you a monopoly license. And in exchange for that, we're going to, regulate you with the Public Service Commission. And that's their job, right? Is to make sure that they're private companies, but they're universal service or, actually doing good work for the people and making sure that consumers are protected. So yeah, it's their job to make sure those companies stay in business. We don't want them to go away. We need electricity. We need water. But at the
Sure.
same time, make sure that consumers are protected and not being taken advantage of.
And how do you think the Alabama PSC is doing in that job?
Yeah, not so
Kind of
hot.
loaded.
Yeah, loaded question, right? Not so hot. We got a lot of work to do in Alabama. We got a lot of work to do in Alabama. I mean, I think if you look at what's happened over the last few years, you have Alabama Power has been one of the most profitable utilities in the country, by far. We've done some preliminary calculations to have some more work to do, but Alabama Power has earned, well over $1 billion in what we would consider to be excess profit. In other words, above and beyond what the kind of average profit margin is for utilities in the country. And so that's a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money for regular folks in Alabama. And so from that perspective alone, just protecting consumer interest has not been as active as we would want them to be. And then also, for the work that we do around energy efficiency, we're last in the country on energy efficiency. It's up to the commission to hold power companies' feet to the fire and make sure they're helping people save energy. It's not just the rate that you pay, it's how much you consume. And we have a lot of consumption. Some is normal that you would expect because it's hot here, but then there's also, no activity whatsoever and helping people save. And it's also the commission's responsibility to make sure that there's, opportunity and access for regular folks that are looking at alternative sources of energy. And we just haven't seen very much, if anything, and the little activity that we have seen has historically been, negative.
Hmm.
So yeah, we have a lot of work to do in Alabama to really help our commission help us.
Well, what do you think? I mean, is there any low-hanging fruit? Like, what are some of the changes that you see that maybe other states' PSCs do better, or is it just a matter of we need new commissioners, or what do you think they should be doing differently?
Well, I definitely think there's some low-hanging fruit. I mean, that's for sure. We don't have to look that far. Like you said, we have neighbors that are
Hmm.
doing way better than Alabama on almost all of these issues. And again, that's not even to say that a state like, say Georgia is the most progressive in the nation. They're
Right.
not, but they are taking substantive steps more progressive steps than we are. Low hanging fruit would just, number one, I think would be energy efficiency. I mean, ultimately the cheapest energy is that which we don't use, right? So a lot of commissions have, taken that step of saying, okay, clearly energy efficiency is cost effective. Most studies are coming in between 2 and 3 cents a kilowatt hour. That's compared to the 10 to 12 cents that you and I pay on our retail. That's the retail rate for your power companies on your power bill. And so it's cheap. Let's go get it. Actually helping save energy would put off the need for building new power plants, something that, we're having to intervene in right now. And I think the second thing is, another issue that's active in front of the commission right now, and we've intervened on this, is this issue of a solar tax, right? So the highest in the nation that we're aware of. Other utilities have tried something similar to Alabama Power, where they're charging a monthly fee for the ability to kind of connect your solar system to the grid.
Right.
And almost every commission has rejected that. The commissions that haven't have had their decisions overturned in court across the country. So these are a couple easy things, like let's get rid of this tax. Last time I checked, we weren't very tax friendly state. So let's get rid of the taxes that are stopping the growth here in Alabama. And then, let's take advantage of some really low cost energy efficiency. And it just happens to have the benefit that we're going to make their bills more affordable for regular folks who I can't think of a better time right now to help them do that.
For sure. Well, you mentioned getting rid of the solar tax, which is, seems like a clear way to make renewable energy more cost effective and more attractive for folks here in Alabama. Are there other policies that y'all at Energy Alabama are working on or think that we should be adopting as a state? Like you said, I know we've got neighbors on both sides, Georgia and Mississippi, that do a much better job of supporting this renewable energy industry. What other policies do we need in Alabama?
In terms of renewable energy, I kind of break it down as two blocks of things that I think we really need right now. Number one is an access issue. And by access, what I mean is, we have a policy that we're pushing. It's called third-party ownership, or energy freedom is often referred to. And what that means is that consumers and businesses actually have a choice as to where at least some of their energy comes from. And those types of policies have been passed in many states around the country, and a lot of southeastern states, South Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas, I believe Florida has a kind of a modified version of it. So these are popular policies among southeastern states because it's about markets, it's about getting people choices about, hey, what do I want to spend my money on, right? So that's more of a legislative thing than it is something at the Public Service Commission. We need the legislature to act to effectively clarify that third-party ownership is perfectly fine in the state, and that, up to a point, you as a consumer or you as a business owner, can buy energy from someone else, someone other than your kind of monopoly power company that you have now. So that's kind of the access issue. And then there's the compensation issue, right? So it's like, well, if you have access to the market, but the market has been gamed so that you get so little for the energy that you might sell, you have access to something that's worthless. And so you still don't take advantage of it, right? And so this is why we and other folks have been, active at the commission trying to get the solar tax overturned, because that's stopping growth, even if there were, better access. And then there's also the issue of the buyback rate. So if I sell energy back to the grid, right now it's what is called avoided cost, and frankly, even probably lower in terms of the way they calculate it. You get very, very little, like maybe 2 cents a kilowatt hour, or sometimes even less. And so, if I pay them 10 cents, but they're only going to give me, 1.5 to 2, you're sitting here looking at this going, well, why would I do this? Like, I'll never make money, or never even pay my cost off. So we've got to have a fair way, right? And that's where the commission can act, and they can help bring parties together. Because clearly groups like us, see a lot of value in renewable energy. And at least historically, the power company hasn't. And so the commission can take a real active mediation role, right? And bring folks together. That's what you see in places like Georgia, was like, let's bring these diverse stakeholders together. Let's hash out a plan for where everybody goes home a little unhappy, but we've made progress, right? And we can help move this needle forward, move the ball forward. So, yeah, I think those are the two buckets that we really got to focus on: getting open access, and then making sure that the compensation, the market is actually, valuing these resources appropriately.
Well, and it seems like from sort of a layman's perspective, you see Alabama Power in particular touting renewables when it's at a corporate level. So when companies come into the state, or military installations that have some sort of baseline quota that they have to meet to have a certain percentage of their energy generated renewably, Alabama Power seems like pretty enthusiastic about that. Why does that not translate into consumer, residential or small business renewable energy, do you think?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, what you're seeing there with those types of projects are, I wouldn't pretend to say that like Alabama Power is against all renewables. I think they're probably for anything that protects their business. And in those cases, right, like if they're going to be the ones selling the renewable power to Fort Rucker or Walmart, there's nothing wrong with that. That helps further cement their monopoly in the state, right? So they would be all for that, regardless of the source. And so I think that's in large part what you see there. Now, in terms of how it translates, right, is that we go back to that access issue. If you're Walmart, you're sophisticated enough and you have enough money to get Alabama Power's attention to say, hey, this is something that I want to do. I have a corporate goal. I'm, one of your largest consumers of electricity. Somebody's got to make a deal there, right? If Daniel Tait or Stephanie Francisco picks up the phone and says, hey, I got a corporate goal at home because my wife and your husband said, blah, 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 we got to do this in our house.
Right.
We don't really get the same level of clout, right, that Walmart does.
Sure.
And so, there's that, and there's not these mechanisms that you see in other places that give people an outlet to make those things happen. And that's also the case with, regular small businesses too. So,
right.
Yeah, it's an access issue, and it's a kind of a preservation of monopoly issue.
Well, to talk a little bit about the legislature, I mean, do you see a path forward for legislative action on renewables anytime soon? Have you seen some sort of willingness there at the State House that you can speak to?
Well, I think that, I'll also say, just to preface it, that I don't know that anything is going to happen on this in the immediate term because of, kind of what we are all experiencing right now with COVID-19 and the kind of economic fallout. And our hope is that if people are looking for good ways to put capital to use and put people to work, clearly energy efficiency and renewable energy are ready. They're ready. I mean, these are some of the largest, fastest growing jobs in the whole country. Alabama has been one of the few states to not, where, say, solar installation technician is not the fastest growing job. So we can do that pretty quickly. I hope that will be part of their consideration. But that said, when we talk to, folks in the legislature, it's pretty interesting, right? Because again, things like what we're advocating for, third party ownership, energy freedom, where we're asking for, no one that I'm aware of is asking for like full retail net metering. We're just asking for fair valuation, a fair market price. But what we're really after here is open, fair, free markets. If again, back to your point, if Alabama Power has the best product on the market, people will buy it. If someone else can compete with them and provide a better product for a homeowner or a small business, we believe that that's the market. They should have the right to do that, right? And so when we talk to legislators, they really get that. They understand that, no one's asking for mandates, no one's asking for, incentives and rebates and all this stuff that's kind of above and beyond markets. We're asking for, let's level the playing field. Let's make sure that everybody has an opportunity. And that's how we're going to, through competition and growth and markets, be able to make this thing happen. And we've seen that work in other southeastern states, as we talked about before, where like Georgia and South Carolina have taken steps towards this, and we've seen massive growth in the renewable energy industry in those states. Again, very similar states to us in terms of politically. So we know it can work. And I
Right.
think they know that too. And that's probably why it's, being viewed more receptively here in Alabama as of late, is because, I mean, there's success stories right across the border, and people are seeing those, especially in rural communities where, massive
Sure.
infusions of tax dollars into local school systems at the rural level. That's a big deal, and we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Daniel, so if folks are interested in Energy Alabama, want to learn a little bit more, where can they find y'all on the World Wide Web?
Yeah, no doubt. So our website, energyalabama.org, you can find us there. We also are, have an active presence if you search for Energy Alabama on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just a quick plug that if you do go to our website or any of our social channels, please look up. We have some, active actions right now. So if people are interested in the kind of seeing the issues on the ground and what we're working on at the Public Service Commission and about this energy freedom work that we're pushing, all that information is there. And there is, tangible things that people can do, talking to their legislators, signing petitions, things like that. So we'll hope that they'll take a look at that and get active.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Daniel Tait from Energy Alabama. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Stephanie.